Here's the full section 1 of your story, written with rich detail and a strong HFY tone. Section 1. Humanity's Rise and the Galactic Exploitation. The Galactic Union had stood for over 100,000 years, an immense bureaucratic monolith composed of thousands of species spanning the Milky Way. At its core were the so-called Elder Races, ancient civilizations that had discovered FTL travel eons ago and, through sheer longevity and control, cemented themselves as the ruling class. The younger, more recently discovered species were often relegated to lesser roles, seen as primitive, disposable, or, at best, mildly interesting. When humanity made first contact, the reaction was dismissive. The Union had seen thousands of species rise and fall, and to them, humanity was just another minor race, one that barely eked out an existence on its unstable, resource-starved homeworld. Earth was viewed as a curiosity, an anomaly where life had somehow survived against astronomical odds. At first, humanity approached the Galactic Union with the same optimism and diplomacy that had once defined their own planet's attempts at unity. They sent ambassadors, offered trade, and extended the hand of friendship. The Union, in response, accepted their membership but as second-class citizens. The reasoning was simple: humanity had nothing of immediate value. Their technology, while surprisingly advanced for a pre-contact species, was still leagues behind the elder races. Their biology, while resilient, was not unique. And their culture? A chaotic mess of contradictions, war and peace, cruelty and compassion, innovation and destruction. So the Union did what it always did to young, eager species. They used them. The exploitation begins. The first contracts were benign, at least on the surface. Humanity was given opportunities to contribute to the greater good. They were offered dangerous but profitable work, terraforming dead worlds, exploring hazardous systems, and handling waste management for the pristine core worlds of the elder races. It was an honor, the Union claimed, a chance to prove themselves. Humans accepted. At first, they did so with enthusiasm. It was in their nature to take on challenges, to push boundaries. Colonists settled worlds considered uninhabitable. Engineers devised new methods to extract resources from asteroids that had been ignored for millennia. Scientists brought fresh perspectives to problems that had stagnated under the weight of bureaucratic inefficiency. Then came the wars. The Galactic Union was not a peaceful utopia. Conflicts erupted between rival factions, between expansionist species and stubborn defenders, between ideologies and resources. The elder races, comfortable in their power, preferred to let others fight their wars for them. Humans were offered military contracts, mercenary work, defensive garrisons, policing unruly frontier worlds. They fought, bled, and died in conflicts that were not their own, often for causes they did not understand. The promised rewards were minimal: outdated ships, second-rate weaponry, a handful of barren moons. Yet, despite everything, humanity thrived. Why humans were different. The other species in the Union struggled to understand what made humanity so effective. They had stronger races, smarter races, species with more advanced technology. Yet time and time again, humans outperformed expectations. Adaptability, no environment was too extreme. Where others saw death, humans saw opportunity. They colonized hellish worlds, engineered survival in impossible conditions, and thrived in places where others would wither. Resilience, their soldiers didn't break as easily. Their workers endured conditions no one else would. They survived injuries that would have been fatal to other species, often returning to work as soon as they could walk. Ingenuity, while their technology lagged behind, their minds did not. They innovated, reverse-engineered, improved upon designs that had stagnated for centuries. Given outdated ships, they modified them to outperform state-of-the-art models. Given inefficient supply chains, they streamlined them to near perfection. Defiance, most younger species, upon joining the Union, assimilated completely or faded into obscurity. Humanity refused. They did not forget their history. They did not surrender their independence. Even as they played the Union's game, They bent the rules to their advantage. Despite their contributions, the Galactic Union remained dismissive. Humans were useful, but never respected. Their proposals in the Galactic Council were ignored. Their demands for fairer contracts were met with bureaucratic delays. The elder races saw them as tools, not equals. And the cracks began to form. ######, the growing resentment. Humanity wasn't naive. They saw how other species were treated. They saw how the Union only valued them for what they could provide. For decades, they tolerated it because that was the price of progress. Because they believed that, in time, their sacrifices would earn them a place at the table. But time passed and nothing changed. Their territories remained limited. Their colonies were taxed into poverty. Their fleets, despite proving indispensable in countless wars, were denied the resources to expand. Human lives were spent freely by those who never acknowledged the cost. Then came the final insult. A disaster. One of unprecedented scale. Maybe it was a planetary catastrophe, a war of extermination, or an economic collapse engineered by corrupt elder races. Whatever it was, humanity turned to the Galactic Union for aid. Not charity, just fairness. The Union's response? **, we cannot spare the resources at this time. **, the same Union that had taken everything from them, that had used human labor to build empires, that had relied on their resilience, their adaptability, their ingenuity, **, had nothing to offer in return. **. That was when humanity finally understood. They weren't part of the Galactic Union. They were servants to it. And so, quietly, without fanfare, without war, humanity made a decision. It was time to walk away. This section sets up the tension and injustice that will drive the rest of the story. Ready for Section 2? ####, Section 2. The day humanity walked away. The final insult had been delivered. For decades, humanity had given everything to the Galactic Union. They had fought its wars, built its infrastructure, explored its deadliest frontiers. They had risked their lives and their future for a place at the table, believing that one day, the Union would recognize their contributions and treat them as equals. That day never came. When humanity suffered its greatest crisis, whether it was a planetary disaster, an engineered economic collapse, or a war of annihilation by a rival species, they turned to the Galactic Union for aid. They didn't ask for charity. They asked for fairness. For the same consideration they had given time and time again to the Union's other members. They were denied. The elder races, seated in their luxurious homeworlds, had claimed there were no available resources to assist. That aid was impractical. That it simply wasn't humanity's time. The same species that had demanded human sacrifice when their own worlds faced peril now turned their backs, unwilling to lift a single tentacle, claw, or limb to help. It was then that humanity understood the truth. The Galactic Union didn't see them as allies. They saw them as tools. And humanity had no interest in being tools any longer. ######, the silent exodus begins. Unlike other species who had once left the Union, there was no war, no rebellion, no fiery speeches of defiance. There was only silence. Humanity stopped answering calls from the Galactic Council. Human trading companies withdrew from Union-controlled marketplaces. Human engineers resigned en masse from their projects. Scientists ended joint research initiatives. Entire colonies, once bustling hubs of commerce and interspecies cooperation, went dark overnight. At first, the Union barely noticed. They had seen this before. Young species often grew disillusioned, threw tantrums, and eventually came crawling back, realizing they could not survive without the Union's vast trade networks and protections. They expected humanity to do the same. But this time was different. Humanity wasn't just withdrawing from politics or reducing its presence in the Galactic Council. They were leaving entirely. It started with the human fleets. Civilian and military ships alike stopped operating in Union space. The humans quietly recalled their personnel from outposts, space stations, and battlefields. Even the mercenaries, once infamous for taking the most dangerous contracts, vanished, leaving employers scrambling for replacements. The effects were immediate, but the full consequences took time to manifest. Hashtag, 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 hashtag the first signs of collapse. At first, the Galactic Union barely acknowledged their absence. A few bureaucrats noted a dip in efficiency reports, but the elder races assured themselves that other species would fill the gap. They were wrong. Logistics ground to a halt. The Union's trade networks had been quietly optimized by human efficiency. With humanity gone, deliveries stalled, supply chains fractured, and once thriving economic hubs fell into chaos. Terraforming projects failed. Entire planets, midway through the terraforming process, were abandoned as human engineers and scientists withdrew. Alien specialists struggled to replicate their work, leading to catastrophic failures. Wars took a darker turn. For decades, humans had been the backbone of interstellar security. With them gone, piracy surged. Border conflicts that had been carefully maintained erupted into full-scale wars. Scientific progress stagnated. Human innovation had pushed the boundaries of technology. Without them, breakthroughs slowed, and certain research projects completely halted. Slowly, the galaxy began to realize something chilling. The Union had never truly understood humanity's value. They had dismissed humans as just another young, reckless species, failing to recognize the quiet revolution taking place within their own systems. And now humanity was gone. Hashtag, 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 hashtag panic sets in. It wasn't long before the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Reports flooded in from every sector: missing workers, derailed projects, collapsing economies. The most powerful races in the Union, those who had once dismissed humanity as unimportant, now found themselves desperate to bring them back. First came the diplomatic messages. The Council sent ambassadors, apologies, pleas for humanity to return. No response. Then came the economic incentives, trade deals, technology transfers, promises of better treatment. Still nothing. Finally, the Council resorted to threats. They declared that any human ships found in former Union space would be seized, that human colonies refusing to cooperate would be placed under embargo. But there was a problem. Humanity was no longer in Union space. Their colonies, once scattered across the galaxy, had quietly packed up and moved. The largest human worlds, once considered vital trading hubs, had become ghost towns. The smaller, isolated research stations had been stripped down and abandoned. The Union had no idea where humanity had gone, and that terrified them. Hashtag, 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 hashtag a new power rises. It took years before the first rumor surfaced. Deep in the unexplored regions of space, beyond the borders of the Union, new colonies had emerged. Human colonies. But these were not struggling settlements eking out survival in the void. Reports from spies, merchants, and rogue traders painted a different picture. These new human territories were thriving, advanced, self-sufficient, and heavily defended. Humanity had not simply walked away. They had prepared. In secret, they had been building something new. A nation free from the Union's control, free from its corruption. A sovereign power no longer dependent on the elder races. And by the time the Galactic Union finally comprehended the full scale of what had happened, it was too late. Humanity had outgrown them. This section builds up the tension and delivers the key HFY moment, when humanity walks away on its own terms. Let me know if you're ready for Section 3. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag Section 3. The galaxy unravels without humanity. At first, the Galactic Union told itself that nothing had changed. Sure, the humans had left, but the galaxy was vast. There were thousands of species within the Union. Someone else would pick up the slack. Someone else would step in where the humans had abandoned their responsibilities. It was an easy lie to believe. For the first few months, things seemed stable. Trade routes still functioned, fleets still patrolled borders, factories still hummed with industry. The bureaucrats assured their citizens that the human withdrawal was insignificant, that it was nothing more than a minor shift in galactic dynamics. They could not have been more wrong. Hashtag, 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 the first cracks appear. The first real warning signs came in the form of logistical failures. Humanity had been deeply woven into the supply chains of the Galactic Union. They had been the ones willing to take on the most grueling, thankless jobs, transporting raw materials across dangerous space lanes, repairing orbital infrastructure in unstable star systems, managing hazardous waste disposal on industrial worlds. With them gone, replacements had to be found. The Union turned to other species to fill the gaps. But the problem was that no other species worked quite like humans. The amphibian-like Zertek refused to work in zero-gravity environments for extended periods, drastically slowing down asteroid mining operations. The Rilnari, a race of avian scholars, were intellectually brilliant but physically fragile, making them terrible replacements for the rugged human workers in heavy industry. The Drelkani, a warlike species known for their brute strength, were initially contracted for security jobs, but they lacked the discipline and efficiency of human military forces. Crime surged in frontier sectors, piracy doubled, and smuggling rings flourished. On paper, the Union still had plenty of workers. In reality, they had lost the workers who kept things running. #######economic collapse. Then came the trade disruptions. For centuries, humanity had been seen as an auxiliary force in the galactic economy, a species that contributed, but not one that controlled major markets. What the Union had failed to realize was that humans had quietly taken control of some of the most critical industries. Their cargo fleets had optimized trade networks to near perfection. Now, without them, shipments were delayed, sometimes by months. Entire worlds faced shortages of food, medicine, and rare resources. The humans had specialized in high-risk, high-reward industries like deep space mining, volatile fuel extraction, and extreme environment manufacturing. With them gone, prices skyrocketed, and entire sectors of industry collapsed. Most damning of all, humanity had been the bridge between other species. They had a unique ability to negotiate and trade between races that otherwise had difficulty dealing with each other. With them gone, commerce between dozens of species broke down. For the first time in thousands of years, some of the Union's wealthiest core worlds faced actual resource shortages. It was unthinkable. The Council convened in emergency meetings, desperate to stabilize the situation. They called for increased production quotas, stricter trade regulations, and state-controlled shipping. None of it worked. Without humanity, the system was simply less efficient. #######the rise of chaos. It wasn't long before the military weaknesses began to show. For decades, humanity had been an invaluable part of the Union's defense forces. While they had never officially been in charge, their soldiers and tacticians had played an outsized role in maintaining order. They had a knack for strategy, for adapting to unpredictable battlefield conditions, for finding unconventional solutions to problems that baffled other species. Without them, the cracks turned into gaping wounds. The outer colonies, once protected by human-led security forces, became easy targets for raiders and pirates. The Drelkani were recruited in greater numbers to compensate, but their brute force approach lacked the precision and tactical intelligence of human-led operations. A longtime rival of the Union, the Zalvani Dominion, sensed weakness and launched border skirmishes. The Union's response was slow and ineffective. Within months, several strategic planets had been lost. The worst came when one of the Union's own member species, the Threxian hegemony, saw the instability as an opportunity. They had always resented the elder races, and now, without human peacekeepers to act as intermediaries, they launched a rebellion. Civil war loomed. And still, humanity did not return. Desperate attempts to bring humans back. At last, the Galactic Union realized the gravity of their mistake. They had spent decades treating humans as a disposable resource. Now they needed them more than ever. The first attempts were diplomatic. Messages were sent to known human colonies, offering apologies, reinstated trade deals, and better political representation. There was no response. The Union then tried economic incentives, offering entire star systems, exclusive trade routes, and technological exchanges. Still nothing. Some factions, in desperation, turned to coercion. The idea was floated that if humanity would not return willingly, they could be forced back. Fleets were assembled, espionage missions were launched, and an effort was made to track down the human exodus. That was when they realized just how much trouble they were in. Humanity had not simply retreated. They had vanished. #, #, the ghosts of the void. The Union sent scout ships to every known human colony. They found nothing. Planets that had once been bustling human trade hubs were abandoned. Stations that had been major logistical centers were stripped down to their bare hulls. Even human research outposts, some of which had been operating for decades, were now nothing more than empty shells, as if their inhabitants had packed up and left overnight. It was as if an entire species had evacuated the galaxy. But that wasn't possible. There was nowhere to go. Or so the Union thought. #, rumors of a new power. The first rumors came from independent traders who operated beyond the Union's borders. They spoke of a new power rising in the void, beyond explored space. They told stories of human ships, *** sleek, advanced, faster than anything the Union had ever built. ***. They spoke of fortified worlds, hidden in the darkness, with planetary defenses that rivaled the Union's core worlds. They whispered of a new human empire, one built in secret, away from the control of the elder races. The Union's worst fear had come true. Humanity had not been crushed by their absence. They had flourished. And they were no longer playing by the Union's rules. This section builds up the fallout of humanity's departure, showing the galaxy's decline without them and teasing the rise of a new, independent human power. Would you like any refinements before we move on to Section 4? #, Section 4. The Reckoning. Humanity's Return. The Galactic Union had spent years stumbling through its self-inflicted chaos. It had limped along, grasping at temporary solutions, patching holes in a dam that was already breaking. But now, the truth was undeniable. Without humanity, the Union was collapsing. And then, just as mysteriously as they had vanished, humanity returned. #, First Contact. On their terms. The first sign wasn't a grand fleet, nor an open declaration. It was silence-breaking. A single transmission, crisp and deliberate, arrived at the Galactic Council's core world. It came not as a desperate plea, nor a meek request for re-entry, but as a simple message. We will speak. On our terms. Panic gripped the Union's leadership. For years, they had sent envoys, threats, bribes, only to be ignored. Now, suddenly, humanity was willing to talk. The Council wasted no time. An emergency summit was held, gathering representatives of all remaining member species. Every seat was filled with nervous anticipation. Some still clung to the old arrogance, believing humanity had finally been humbled and come crawling back. But when the humans arrived, it became clear humanity had not come to negotiate for its return. They had come to judge. ***. #, the new humanity. They did not enter the chamber in the old human uniforms, nor with the casual familiarity they once had with the Union's diplomats. No. They walked clad in uniforms of black and silver, bearing emblems none had ever seen before. Their presence was calm but commanding. Their movements precise, practiced. Their leader, an older human with sharp eyes and a measured voice, spoke not as an ambassador, but as a sovereign. We were loyal, he said. We built, we bled, we fought for a seat at your table. And when we needed you most, you turned away. Silence. Now, you reap what you have sown. The Union leaders stammered, scrambled for words. They spoke of misunderstandings, of bureaucracy, of unfortunate circumstances. They begged humanity to return, to bring their workers, their fleets, their minds. They promised everything humanity had ever wanted. And humanity laughed. #, the consequences of betrayal. The humans had not come to rejoin the Union. They had come to replace it. The collapse of the Union had not just been an accident of incompetence. It had been engineered. While the Union floundered, humanity had thrived beyond the stars. They had not merely abandoned their old homes, they had expanded beyond them. The colonies they had established were no longer fragile settlements. They were powerful, independent, and most importantly, self-sufficient. They no longer needed the Union, but the Union needed them. And now, humanity was here to dictate terms. #######, the end of the Galactic Union. The new human leader, no longer an ambassador, but something else entirely, laid out humanity's final offer. The Union is finished. It is inefficient, corrupt, and doomed to collapse under its own weight. We will not save it, but we will offer an alternative. Gasps filled the chamber. The implications were clear. The Union would not be restored. Instead, humanity had founded something new, the Terran sovereignty. It would not be ruled by the elder races. It would not tolerate bureaucratic incompetence or corruption. It would not be beholden to the old ways of the Union. Species were welcome to join, but only under human governance. The backlash was immediate. Some Union members called it madness. Others, particularly those from the elder races, raged at the idea of bending the knee to a younger species. But then came the second transmission. A fleet appeared on the edges of the Union's home systems. Not an invasion force. Not an armada of destruction. A demonstration. These were not the outdated ships humanity had once piloted under the Union's banner. These were sleek, cutting-edge vessels, bristling with technology that outmatched anything the Union had. They moved with an efficiency no Union fleet could replicate. Their weapon systems, their formations, their presence, it all spoke of a power far beyond what the Council had imagined. For all their arrogance, for all their condescension over the centuries, the elder races realized a horrifying truth. Humanity had surpassed them. #######, the final choice. The Council was given an ultimatum. They could resist, clinging to the last remnants of their power, and be swept away like dust. Or they could join humanity's new order, accepting their place under Terran rule. Some still scoffed, believing the Union could rally its fleets, mount a counterattack. But their own military leaders knew better. Humanity had always been the backbone of the Union's forces. And now they had taken that expertise, honed it, perfected it. There was no winning a war against them. And so, the Union fractured. Some species, recognizing the inevitable, swore allegiance to the Terran sovereignty. They understood that under human leadership, there was order, prosperity, and a future. Others refused, clinging to their old pride, retreating into obscurity. But they were few, and they would never rise again. The Galactic Union, the once mighty empire that had dismissed humanity as nothing more than useful pawns, was no more. And in its place, the sovereignty rose. ######, the legacy of humanity. The message was clear. Humanity had been underestimated, taken for granted, betrayed. But in the end, they had emerged stronger than ever. They had not just survived without the Union. They had transcended it. And as the stars bore witness, a new era began. Not one ruled by the complacency of the elder races. Not one dictated by the corruption of bureaucrats. But one where humanity had finally, undeniably, taken its place among the rulers of the galaxy. And this time, they would not be walked over. This time, they ruled. This final section delivers the ultimate HFY, humanity moment ***, not just survival, but domination. Humanity returns not as beggars, but as conquerors, wielding the power they had secretly built in exile. Let me know if you want any refinements or additions.